Hello, everyone. My name is Laurel Ruma, and I am an editor here at O'Reilly Media. I'm based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're really excited to have you all here today for our very first O'Reilly Gov 2.0 online conference. We're very excited to host this event, and we're glad you all made the time to attend today. And I promise you will learn something. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers, and I want to thank them all in advance, as well as our sponsor, Microsoft. And just to let you know, if you are on Twitter, it's not too late to get all your other friends to join the conference. And feel free to use the chat room, blog, tweet about these talks. And as we said, we like to see the conversation continue. So if you are on Twitter, please use the hashtag, hashtag Gov2.0 or Gov2.0. and follow our event account, which is Gov2Events.
So this is Mark Drapo, your other co-host. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C., and I just wanted to say a few words about how the Government 2.0 online conference came to be. A few months ago in September in Washington, O'Reilly and TechWeb held an event called the Government 2.0 Expo Showcase, and what that was a showcase of 30 talks that were all 5 minutes, and exactly the kinds of hidden talent, unknown people, local government initiatives that we wanted to highlight and show the breadth and depth of what's actually going on in the country with Government 2.0. And on that day, we chose 5 winners in 5 categories of Government 2.0. And the biggest feedback we got was that the 5-minute talks were great, but people wanted to know a little bit more. So what we've done today is brought back the 5 winners to speak for about 15 minutes about the same topic they spoke about in September, to go a little bit deeper into the challenges they faced and the successes they had, and to also interact with an audience and take some Q&A via the chat room or via Twitter or via the Google Wave. So today you'll be able to hear them speak more in depth. You'll be able to pose your questions to the speakers, and we hope that everyone has a great interaction and that you all learn a lot.
During the breaks, you will hear from Michelle Viotti of NASA, and she'll talk about a great project it's about citizens mapping Mars. So that's a really interesting project she has there. And then we'd also like to thank our program sponsor, Microsoft Corporation, for helping us bring the Gov 2.0 online conference to you. You can learn more about how you can use the technology that you already own to ready your enterprise for Gov 2.0 and so much more at www.microsoftgovready.com. And with that, I think we're ready to kick off the conference. So our first speaker today is Peter Coates. He is the Economic Development Coordinator at the City of Santa Cruz in California. And he will be talking about the City of Santa Cruz budget crisis, a blueprint using social media and a blueprint for using social media. Peter?
Hey, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining. So just to start off, how you doing? I participated in the DC event, and when I got there about 7:30 in the morning and got backstage, I realized everyone else on my panel, their project budgets were probably larger than the general fund that I was dealing with during our budget crisis last year. And it was actually great to be able to pick up so many good tips and tricks from other people. So Santa Cruz is one of the nicest small towns in all of America. We're wedged between a marine sanctuary on one side of our downtown and a redwood forest on the other, and it's absolutely wonderful to live here. However, we also have a fairly rich tradition of public engagement. Basically, our university was set up specifically to prohibit large people gathering and protesting in one place, and I've really enjoyed that spirit, but it's been difficult, especially because the Outliers have always controlled the debate here. Unfortunately, over the last 30 years in California, thanks to a state constitution that's been papered over with more than 435 budget revisions, the city of Santa Cruz, like all other California towns, was facing a budget crisis of unimaginable proportions. Protest is common, opinions are rampant, and it's a very difficult moving target of an issue to face. Our city manager, unlike somebody in the private sector, just cannot cut what he needs to cut each budget cycle. We're a highly regulated work environment, and unlike what Sequoia Capital always suggests, which is cut early, cut deep, that just isn't applicable for us in the public sector. We have to balance service obligations, bargaining unit contracts, seniority, and other factors when making cuts. I know probably for most of this audience, the concept of bumping is familiar, but for those that's not, job classifications, when a person with a similar job classification in one division gets laid off, they can bump a less experienced person somewhere else in the bureaucracy during the layoffs, so that you not only get the layoff disruption and that one person would lose their job, but that you would have a person filling a job role at the same classification that might not be immediately applicable, and they'll be retraining. Over the last 5 years, our city has laid off more than 110 people, some 10% of our total workforce. It's closed the community pool, a family resource center, and both our museums. This year, we closed our teen center and a community center. In fact, we are in large ways functionally bankrupt. If we face a natural disaster, we couldn't fix our roads or our downtown like we lost in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. And we've seen our general fund revenues drop, our healthcare costs climb, and our budget deficit in our general fund balloon to 15% of the total fund. So this is a crisis, and it's bad, but the good thing about crises is that there are opportunities to try new things and to try and, just apply whatever talents you have to try and get through the situation. So this is the line that I use to try and get this this idea that we're going to talk about through here at the city. Try something. If it fails, admit it, frankly, but, try something. Our city manager and our mayor pulled together a community work group about the budget crisis a couple months before it really became public. So this is like March and April. And, that was the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, all the people that would normally be associated with this kind of debate. And the big, Joe Sanchez, 9 sets of reductions would be 9 individual sets of layoffs since about 2005. To get back on track, during those discussions, it was decided that we would try and get more people involved in the budget debate to show more of the factors that are affecting the layout of the budget, and to try and show what an enterprise fund is, what a general fund thing is, and be very educational about this. And the credo was that we needed to communicate directly with the public and set expectations of what a city can and can't provide its citizens. Now, public commentary, like when you get it at a city council meeting or on an online forum, is sometimes very, very useful and very, very good for us to hear. But then also you have the outliers in the debate. Last year, somebody made a mashup of one of our city council webcasts with a woman who was not, making a ton of sense, and posted on the Huffington Post, and it actually got some national attention. It was kind of funny. And then we also have, an online comment board on our daily newspaper where, we in the city read this kind of commentary all the time. We've faced a lot of reductions in our media landscape, like most small towns. Our newspaper has been bought and sold 2 times in the last 3 years. It's faced about 45 to 50% cut across the board. It's printed in San Jose now, and they moved the office out to Scotts Valley, which is about 10 miles or so outside of town. So our daily paper is weakened. We don't have any local television stations. And our radio stations, we have 2 public radio stations. It's largely syndicated content on that as well. So just getting the information about the size of the crisis was difficult for us. So we needed new tools, and we needed new conversations. We definitely needed new people to get involved into the debate. We had a complex moving target, not easily boiled down into talking points. So much like healthcare, this was a very complex debate. What we face is that much of a political debate is an argument between outliers on either side of an issue. Well, the majority of the population, let's call them the reasonable center, is rendered mute. This year in Santa Cruz, it was just too large of a crisis to hand over the conversation to that portion of the population. So with the help of 3 community volunteers, and I'm going to call them out by name, Shane Perlman, Peter Chester, and Rob Knight. Rob works for the university up at University Relations, and Shane and Peter have a web development company called Shane and Peter Incorporated. We decided to create a portal to secure community feedback on the budget conversation. We had a week, we had no money, and Shane had a 3-month-old. So it was a little bit of a challenge. We decided to build everything on top of WordPress, which is easily available. And then what the intention was to get all of our budget documents up, allow people to do suggestions for how we should face the crisis. We gave the mayor a blog for sort of 0-hour reporting on the situation as it came out. And then we tried to make graphs and other visualizations of the data so that it was easier to understand and that the language of the budget document didn't get in the way of the understanding of how it worked. On a larger scale, we were trying to reframe the conversation from not the public telling us, you should do this, you should do that, but getting a sense of community and saying that we can do this together. I think we owe a large debt of gratitude to, the national campaigns of 2008, and, obviously we can do this, playing off the, yes, we can. So we wanted to present information with multiple points of entry. We'd present the raw numbers for the accountants and the CFOs in town. We'd start a blog for the mayor for 0-hour updates, and most importantly, we'd have a tool to facilitate a real conversation. We couldn't use anonymous comment boards for obvious reasons. We didn't have the staffing or the leeway under the First Amendment to set up very heavily moderated forums. And we didn't have the technology, the budget, or the timing for, a presentation like we're having this morning with O'Reilly. So we called in with the help of a local startup. They were called User Voice. They still are. At the time, they were 3 people in like a 400-square-foot office. And they're deceptively simple software. Citizens could suggest an idea to the city. Other users could then review that suggestion, vote for it, between 1 and 3 votes to vote it up. So that the outliers of the conversation didn't get buy-in. They sort of fall in the standing, and those that suggest the most reasonable things and get the most buy-in become more visible on the site. There were actually 2 sites that played against each other, a user voice forum, which is at santacruz.uservoice.com if you want to look at the raw data, and then the main budget site, which sat at citysantacruzca.gov. Not the most helpful URL, but it worked for our purposes. Basically what happened was we saw the debate was widening. These were the top vote getters that we got. Basically coordinate public service with other local jurisdictions to save on overhead. My job, which is build the tax base to provide long-term support for city services, like actually reframing the discussion around the economic development here. Donations, either of time or of money for city services that they want. People wanted to see pay cuts, that's fine. And then analyze efficiency within city systems as well, mostly through the use of IT. We did have the omniscient voice, the city admin, which was basically our mayor, titular head of the government, would go through each one of the discussions on each one of these suggestions and comment back on a weekly basis. So what we saw is that, as the votes started tumbling in, the site caught on, our analytics told us that we're reaching further into the communities than public meetings or op-eds would normally get us. We had, between May 15th and July 1st, the actual beginning of the fiscal year, we had about 4,000 unique visitors to the site. There were a couple of thousand votes and a couple of hundred suggestions that came in. The way that we did it was we first socialized it through email to neighborhood groups, business groups, political groups. Then we used media to get more people in. We actually syndicated out the RSS feed so that people could do new visualizations if they wanted it. And we just basically saw some geometric growth. It was very much set up to be a website that would deal with one issue well, and then we basically close it down. And what we saw was that the voice of the community was reasonable, sensible, and very helpful. And this is an eye chart, and I do apologize, but I just wanted to point out that in this whole conversation, there's, the suggestion from somebody, the response by the city saying what we're doing on this already, and then other people going through and looking through the budget documents and analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of what we were doing. And it was a very good conversation. It led to a lot of meetings in the city after the budget was adopted. A lot of the ideas are actually still under discussion here a couple months after that. Now, we did still have Outliers. Gotta love this guy. Sees all private businesses in Santa Cruz, but you can see he gets one vote, and he's basically buried on the user voice forum. Like, you have to click through like 5 pages to get to this, because user voice always brings the most important ideas, or the most bought-in ideas, to the top. Then we syndicated that. Santa Cruz population is 55,100. It was a $9.2 million budget hit out of, we have $155 million total budget, and the general fund was about $60 million. So it was about 15% of our general fund. Let's see. So by using RSS from user voice over to the main page, you needed at least 60 people to agree with you to get to the main page of the website. But as you can see, outliers stay outliers, not the focus of the debate. And after a few days, we got the mayor to start reading through the site, responding to ideas. Most of them were accepted. Some of them were impossible, but a lot of them are still under debate. Let's see. So regardless of how inspiring this website was, we still face some big cuts. We lost 22 full-time and 26 part-time employees. That was 14% of the employees that were funded out of the general fund. Those that did keep their jobs will suffer 10% pay cut, shortening their work week to 36 hours and introducing the concept of Furlough Friday. So I used my Furlough Friday to start grad school again. So I'm up at San Francisco State getting my MPA. Now, I work for Redevelopment, and during this crisis, I was telling everyone, oh, don't worry about me, we're not general fund. Besides, who would cut economic development money in the middle of a recession? We had the city tax rolls, and in California, the legislator tossed RDAs under the bus the day they signed their state budget, slicing $2 billion statewide for the fiscal year. Lawsuits are underway, but essentially, our redevelopment agency of an annual budget of $14 million had to cut a $3.7 million check to the government. And we will not likely see it. So just wanted to wrap up with lessons learned. Don't rely exclusively on third parties to tell your story. Following the foundations of open government, show your cards, show all of them. We provided all the budget documents, the comprehensive annual financial reports, the city manager nonpartisan budget analysis. All of those were there for basically the last 6 years. So show all your cards. Don't be afraid of public opinion. It can be reasonable, creative, and powerful. And solicit feedback within narrow channels without the cover of anonymity. Make people own who they are and make people speak on a subject. Good examples of this philosophy would be DataSF, which I'm a huge fan of. They were also at the Gov 2.0 Expo. Kelly did a great presentation about that. Data.gov, I use all the time. I also really like the New York Times Congress API. I find that fascinating. The other thing is that geeks are a powerful and patriotic resource. Technology is the only service that can help automate municipal processes, saving dollars and increasing efficiency. Technology can lead to more transparency. That's a good thing for democracy. Can help foster innovation and help get more and different people involved in an ongoing debate. The status quo can't, basically for us, status quo can't hold through more budget cycles like this. We need to take the community into consideration when making further cuts. This website framework can be used for other crises. We're looking at exploring real-time feedback in council meetings. And for me and my department, it's reframe the debate around economic development and its relationship to these kinds of crises. We don't need to worry about that. So with that, thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward to taking your questions. And I'm really honored to be able to participate in this kind of event. So thank you.
Thanks, Peter. That's fantastic. We do have a couple questions, and we'll have to be real quick here to stay on schedule today. So from Joe Sanchez, did you leverage storytelling in conjunction with your citizen sourcing efforts?
And like presenting case studies of the people that were affected or that kind of thing?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that was done through mostly third-party media, through the press. We did, communicate with the press throughout this whole crisis, and, we really allowed the reporters to do their jobs. We were really about presenting the totality of the crisis and presenting the information so that people could form their own opinions.
And one from Rolly Cole here. He says, choices work with votes, but sometimes a great idea only has one vote. So who besides the mayor was looking over the user voice board to kind of look at the ideas and maybe see something that was an outlier that was actually a good idea?
In that case, their user voice forum is completely open. You can troll through it right now if you want to go look at it. As far as people that were looking on it inside, it was everyone in the city manager's office, myself, members of the city council. Everyone could look at it and comment on it as their own. We used the mayor as the official voice, and it was nonpartisan, or at least as much as we could, nonpartisan and non-political responses, saying this is the program that addresses that. This is what we're trying to do in this direction, and just speaking to facts as best we could. And there were a few ideas that didn't get a lot of votes that were good ideas, but that we did focus on the ones that got the most ideas because the most momentum behind it means that we could push it through the process here quicker.
And I'm trying to get a lot of different voices here, so I'm not going through the questions in order, but Sherry Maddox asks, what tools did you use for voting by the public? Like intense debate or
discus? No, actually, it was. We didn't turn off the. We didn't have comments on the main site. We did all the comments through the user voice forums, based around the individual events.
And let's see. We'll go back to Rolly here about anonymity and the Constitution. So, how do you protect anonymous voices when you have this kind of debate?
Well, we didn't stop anybody from registering or commenting. We just suggested that people use their own voices and indicate that they were either a resident or that they did business in the city. People really did behave themselves very well on this forum. That was the best thing about this, was that it proved that you could set up a framework for people to have a discussion online, and they could stay on track, and that it would work.
Now, what did you do if someone wasn't able to get online? I mean, were you still accepting queries through phone calls or in person?
Oh, of course. I mean, we have a city clerk's office for anybody that wanted to write a letter or, submit an email or, put in a voice message. Of course, all our standard lines of communication were open. This was one small part of an effort to educate people on the size of the crisis that we were facing.
And we'll leave on this last very great question from Greg. If you were to start all over as an agency head, looking into getting into Gov 2.0, what items would you do first, and in what order?
Okay, that is a great question. One, I might stay working at Cisco. What would I do first? So I think the first thing they have to do is make the data available for people. Because of what's happening in the media right now, it's hard to get information about government. And so for us to work on the local scale, that live in your neighborhoods, our kids go to school with your kids, it's good to show what we do on a daily basis and what we generate. And then second, make it accessible for people to manipulate or do visualizations like what's happening in Washington, D.C. with everything the Office of the Chief Technology Officer does there. And then try and, make those open source so that people can use them when they're doing analysis, either in the press or on their own sites. We have a very active geek community here that helps us with those kinds of things. Like right now we're working on crime mapping and that kind of stuff. And basically, my belief is that, I'm probably never going to be an agency head, but just show what you do, let the public interact with it, and let the debate go. Get as many people involved in government as possible.
Sounds like excellent advice. So, everyone, I'd like to thank Peter Coate from the City of Santa Cruz for making time to be here today with us. And
I'm sure everyone is applauding for Peter. We just can't hear all of you. But thank you so much, Peter.